We want to take this call, though. This guy's name is Pete Pranica. You know what I'm saying?
Pranica's awesome.
He's the TV guy doing play-by-play for the Memphis Grizzlies. Hey, Pete, what's cooking, man?
Well, not a lot of good news in the Grizzlies world with the announcement that Steven Adams is going to miss at least the next 4 weeks. So we're trying to recover from the last road trip, and to get hit with another bit of bad news is it's not a good day.
I think we want to get to a lot of things on your roster, but let's start with this. Which game are you broadcasting tonight? The Grizzlies-Warriors game or the fight outside between Draymond and Brooks?
Well, since it's a TNT national game, we can't do it. So we'll be observing whatever happens between those two guys, because certainly there's been a war of words. And all I can say is I was on the debate team in high school, and I wish Draymond had been my partner, because we would have won a heck of a lot more tournaments if he had been my partner.
I can imagine the rebuttal where he's scribbling notes after the opening salvo from the other team, and he's just blasting away. And I'm not sure if name calling worked back in your forensics, but man, he sure went at Dillon Brooks with double barrels yesterday.
Yeah, he did. And obviously Draymond and the Warriors, they've got rings to back it up, and so they're going to talk. And Dillon doesn't like Draymond, and Draymond doesn't like Dillon, and the two teams really don't like each other. So it's just kind of the way it is. It's not as much of a rivalry, I think, as some people might want to make it out to be, because frankly, with the exception of the play-in win by the Grizzlies a couple of years ago, the series has been owned by the Warriors. So but I'm sure emotions are going to be high. The Grizzlies, I will be interested to see how they respond to not having Brandon Clark for the rest of the season. When you talk about 4 weeks for Steven Adams, that essentially is the rest of the regular season. And then Ja Morant for an indeterminate period of time. So their mental capabilities and their will to win will be tested tonight. And, will they come out and be the more desperate team? By the same token, I know Golden State struggled on the road. It's obviously a game where the two teams don't like each other, so I would imagine that Golden State's going to come out with a fair amount of vim and vigor to get a win here on the road.
Pete, I know when you say it's maybe not as big of a rivalry as people would expect, I know sort of what you're indicating, that the Warriors have had the upper hand, but there's definitely a perception here that the Grizzlies players are borderline obsessed with the Warriors. Is that not the case in your mind?
No, I don't think they're obsessed. I think that it's a game you get up for. I mean, the Warriors are four-time champions. If you can't get up for playing the four-time champions, playing Steph Curry, best shooter on the planet, Draymond Green, one of the best and most unique players in the history of the NBA, if you can't get mentally ready for that game, if you don't get jacked for that game, well, then you probably should find a different profession. So, regardless of anything, look, you're playing the champs. You want to beat the champs, and particularly on your home floor. So, I don't think the Grizzlies are obsessed with Golden State. Dillon talks trash about a lot of people, not just Draymond Green.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Warrior fans still thinking about that Gary Payton II flagrant that he sustained last year in the playoffs. Just looking at this Memphis team tonight and going forward for the next 4 games without Ja Morant, from where does the offense derive?
Well, a lot of it is going to have to come from Tyus Jones, which we saw in the last couple of games, particularly the Clipper game. He has the capability of going for 20-plus. Desmond Bane had a great game against the Clippers, poor game against the Lakers. The issue that the Grizzlies have is that you really don't have, outside the Desmond Bane, you don't have a secondary ball handler. Kennedy Chandler's a rookie. He may get some run. He was bothered by a stomach virus in the previous game against the Lakers and wasn't even active for that particular game. So, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to have to go large. The guys that are standing still have to go large. Jaren, I think, has to go 25-plus in order for the Grizzlies to have a chance to win. I think Desmond Bane has to go 25-plus. This is a team that's going to have to rely on those guys in order to get the majority of their offense, and maybe Luke Kennard gets hot. He's been running hot and cold. He was hot against the Clippers, cold against the Lakers. So everybody is going to have to participate and contribute in a big way. But I think Bane, and Jones and Jackson are the guys that are really going to have to make it happen offensively.
Pete Pranica, who is the TV play-by-play voice of the Memphis Grizzlies, is joining us here on Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game. Pete, let's talk about Ja Morant. What has been the reaction out there, and where do you think this goes next?
I think the reaction has been largely supportive here in Memphis, understanding that, here's a kid who's made some poor decisions, and he's going to take responsibility for those decisions. I think that's the general reaction here in Memphis. Obviously, the reaction nationally has been all over the board, and some of it has been, frankly, reprehensible. But be that as it may, here in Memphis, people are willing to support. They're glad that he's stepping away from the team, that he can get whatever issues he has addressed in a constructive fashion. And, beyond that, it's like, well, we don't know when he's going to be back. Right now, he's away from the team. It is not a suspension. But by the same token, the league is doing their investigation, their due diligence. Will that result in a league suspension? A lot of this is unknown at this point. So it's terra incognita, if you will, for the Grizzlies in a lot of ways.
What's your impression of the young man, being close to him as the play-by-play voice of the team? Because outside of the Memphis bubble, many fans, like you were saying, some of the reactions are reprehensible. I don't think that we know the Ja Morant that you see day in and day out.
He is, I talked to one of our assistant coaches who is like his exclusive workout coach, and says he's never met a better person in terms of relating. He treats the coach's family and kids like his own. And it's so crazy because, okay, we're in Denver and our broadcast location is right next to a series of seats. Our trainer puts a little thing of hand cream right in front of us, and the players come and, they use the hand cream or whatever. There's a kid immediately to the right of our broadcast position sitting courtside with a Morant jersey. He's obviously a Ja fan. He's reaching out before tip-off. He wants Ja to dap him up. And Ja, at first doesn't see him and starts putting cream on his hands, and then he sees the kid and like, okay, I've got cream all over my hands. What do I do? This kid wants me to dap him up. So Ja takes some of the cream off his hands, puts it on the kid's hands, rubs it in, daps him up. That's, so you see that, and then, of course, the next morning we wake up and everybody saw the video on Instagram Live. I think he's a really good kid. He had a quote a couple of years ago in the bubble, and he said, when you feel like you're drowning, it's because you're trying to be the anchor for everybody. So maybe he's dealing with some burdens and some pressures and some stresses that, we don't know about or aren't apparent, even to those of us closest in the organization. And so you see him on the one hand where he's been so incredibly generous. I saw him, not only give away some shoes, but he's done Make-A-Wish events here in Memphis. He's been great with kids. He's been great with us in the broadcast community. And then you see what happens on Instagram Live, and you're going like, okay, how do we corroborate these two sides of Ja? So I think he's a good kid who's made some bad decisions, maybe because of stress or other factors in his life. And I think all of us just want him to get right, that he can handle the stresses and the pressures of being a major star in the NBA and the leader of an NBA team that have championship aspirations, that they can get all this squared away.
Yeah, that's all really interesting. From the view out here, you look at a roster that has no one who's had their 30th birthday, and now you got a lot of those guys out and it makes it hard for them to sort of maybe fill in their role as leaders. I wonder how you'd answer this, Pete. Do the Grizzlies have a leadership issue?
I have felt that you should always have an OG there, whether that's Andre Iguodala or whoever, working with a particularly young team to make sure that they stay on the straight and narrow, and just teach young guys how to be professionals. There's a lot more to being a professional basketball player than bouncing a ball and cashing a check. There's a lot more to it than that. And sometimes young guys, they don't understand, whether it's taking care of your body, getting your proper rest, the effort that you put in, whatever it is. And this team has been very, very young, and there's nobody on the north side of 30. I think in roster construction, I think you need to have one of those guys. And the Grizzlies don't. Steven Adams has tried to step into that role. But if you talk to anybody on the team, when Ja's around the team, he's the leader, but he's a leader at 23. So, I wish that there were that Jay Crowder type player, which the Grizzlies had during Ja's rookie season, that you'd have that type of guy, that type of veteran influence. I think that's very helpful in a lot of ways, but it's not something the Grizzlies have. I think last time I checked, they're the third youngest team in the NBA by average age. So, and this is where I think you miss Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson he's not a very vocal leader, but he was one of those older pros that had been around, obviously, in the San Antonio program. So, I think the Grizzlies are missing him right now, but that's the way this roster's been put together. And Steven Adams, now not able to play, is still trying to be a leader, and that's good. But hopefully there are some more guys that can take leadership roles.
Yeah, Pete, gosh, it's an interesting story the way things have turned there for that team, and appreciate your candor on it, and thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, you too. That's Pete Pranica, the TV voice of the Memphis Grizzlies.